Risk orientation, I think, is a big part of breaking down the critic, that fear that comes in, right? You're on the line. Should I go forward? Should I not? You have to be willing to do it if you believe in what you're trying to do. And if you believe that you're going to work hard enough and not quit, then you have to have risk orientation and a higher level of it than the average person. And from that, you're going to take risks and they're not all going to work out. And you're going to be like, what the heck? So you could decide to quit, let the critic win. He's going to say, I told you not to do that because you would fail. But then you could say, you know what? No, I'm going to bring in my learning orientation. Why did I fail? What took place? What can I do to improve? And you take your next step forward.
Welcome to Charge Forward Coaching, the podcast for committed athletes and individuals who want to achieve more on and off the field. Hosted by James Blasco, certified mental toughness and resilience coach. You'll gain insights and inspiration from elite athletes, coaches, and others who know what it takes to excel. Are you ready to go to the next level? Then tune in, get inspired, and let's charge forward. Now here's your host, James Blasco.
Hello, and welcome to the Charge Forward Coaching Podcast. I'm James Blasco. Thanks for tuning in. Well, this is the second in a two-part series on what I called the critic or the dream killers out there as you're chasing your goals. On the first episode, we talked about the critic on the outside, right? Those people who kind of plant seeds of doubt in our mind. But today we're going to talk about the critic on the inside. I think that's a bit more challenging. And that's what we talk about all the time. Mental toughness plays a huge part in helping you achieve your goals and persevere. And that critic is unfortunately always there. We all have the critic. So let me give you a couple examples of people who absolutely had a critic and then they overcame it. So first is Justin Rose. As the Masters going on, Justin Rose was looked at as this young golfer who was going to, change golf. And he was just unbelievable. And then he turns pro and he misses the first 21 cuts. Think about that. What do you think the critic in his mind was telling him? You're overrated. You can't do this. What were you thinking? How did you get here? You're a poser, something along those lines. That's what the critic's thinking. And then here's another one. Bill Belichick, right? You look at maybe the greatest NFL coach of all time. Okay, well, for those of you who don't remember, he coached the Cleveland Browns for 5 years and had a losing record and was fired, right? How many seeds of doubt do you think he had in his mind? Probably a lot. So how did Justin Rose and Bill Belichick totally flip the script on their critic internally? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So the critic, let's find out where this critic come from. The critic comes from really your subconscious. So subconscious takes in all this information. It doesn't sort it by what's real or not real, just takes it in. And then it's always going on in the background and it tries to put pieces of this information together. And every once in a while hands you a story. And you look at it as, oh, wow, that's real, right? Or that's something that I am doing or not doing, or I can't do. And really, it's just a story. None of it's necessarily true. It's just information that's coming into your mind, and you have to be able to sort through it. So the critic basically judges and compares everything you do. They're judging you on your action or your ability. They're comparing you to your competition or to somebody else that is doing the same thing you're trying to do. And most of the time, the critic is saying, you've never done this. You can't do this. Why do you think you could do this? There's nothing we have stored that says you're capable of doing this. And so it's constantly just latching on to your beliefs and almost redefining them for you. So you have to change that. And there's a lot of evidence within neuroscience, and there's some great books out there that you could read of how to kind of reset or reprogram your thinking. But the biggest thing is when this happens, fear takes place. You have that doubt and you think, I'm at the line, I'm at the threshold of what I'm trying to do. I've never gone beyond here. And gosh, I don't think I could do this. I'm going to reel back in, safety zone. And that's where most people stop, unfortunately. They get to a point where their own internal thought process is planting seeds that they can't accomplish something. So for example, like if you're a golfer and you shoot like an average of 80 every round, and all of a sudden you're out there one day and you're about to shoot par, you're like 72, you're rolling through. Believe it or not, your subconscious, because you believe that you shoot 80 or around 80 every round, is going to kick in and try to find a way to have you shoot 80. It's not doing it to derail you. It doesn't think like, I got to destroy this guy's dream of, shooting 72 or whatever. It's actually trying to protect you. It thinks that you shoot an 80, so you should shoot an 80. How do we do that? And so it's crazy to think that, but it's actually true. So you do have to reprogram, and you do have to find a way to get this critic out of your mind. And the number one way you could do it is by letting go of the result you want. It sounds counterintuitive, right? Because we're always setting goals and we want to get somewhere, but you do have to let go. You have to do it in a couple different ways. Number one, you're talking about process during the event of what you're doing. So if you're golfing, you're focusing on, your swing, the 1, 2, 3, whatever rhythm and count and triggers you have to hit a good shot. You're thinking about the shot itself, but you're not thinking about what your score is going to be at the end of the round. You have to get that out of your mind. So you can't focus on results. You focus on process and what's next. That's it. Results are going to be the gasoline and fuel for the critic, because they're going to say, there's no way you're shooting 72. In fact, I won't let you shoot 72. So you have to let go of results. There's really three things that the subconscious is trying to do, and they're, sort through the information. That's one. We kind of talked about that. It's going to try to run your life from the background. Like I said, it's going to spit out information, and then it's going to take results or circumstances, and it's going to develop beliefs for you based on those. And that's where we fall into problems. So one of the things that you need to lean on, of course, is the 4 C's of mental toughness. So let's start with commitment. When you set a goal and you're going to work towards something, you have to have strong goal orientation, because otherwise the critic's just going to beat you up. You don't know where you're going. So anywhere you go, the critic is going to be the critic and throw in doubts and curveballs at you. But if you remember every day what you're focused on, you're actually going to start reprogramming your mind. And again, the subconscious doesn't know what's real, what's not. And subconscious is going to start tagging along for the ride as we reprogram the mind. And you got to stay focused. So achievement orientation is really, really important. You got to keep moving forward. And then we get to control. And what I feel here is that life control. When you look at what you're doing every day, when you really understand what your values are, why you're doing something, you're taking care of yourself, you're focusing and being around the right individuals who support you, encourage you, love you, those types of things. That's really, really important. And emotional control. Emotional control comes up so much in different things we're trying to work through. Again, if you listen to the last episode, the emotions are going to happen. They're going to happen quick, but then it's up to you whether you want to continue with that emotion or step away from it. And there's different techniques you could use. And I talked about interviewing yourself. That's one of the things that I do, but you could find a different way to kind of step back, reframe what that emotion really means to you, and then kind of move on from there. And then challenges, risk orientation, I think is a big part of breaking down the critic, that fear that comes in, right? You're on the line. Should I go forward? Should I not? And that I don't care if it's sports or business, your career, relationships. There's always a point, if you're going to be successful, where you get to a line that you've never crossed over before. And it's a big risk. It could cost you something, right? You have to be willing to do it if you believe in what you're trying to do. And if you believe that you're going to work hard enough and not quit, then you have to have risk orientation and a higher level of it than the average person. And from that, you're going to take risks, and they're not all going to work out. And you're going to be like, what the heck? So you could decide to quit, let the critic win. He's going to say, I told you not to do that because you would fail. But then you could say, you know what? No, I'm going to bring in my learning orientation. Why did I fail? What took place? What can I do to improve? And you take your next step forward, right? So those three are key. And then confidence. Confidence is like probably the most important of the 4 C's. And it goes back to me, confidence in abilities. If you're doing the right things, the critic in your mind, what's it going to say? You're doing the things you need to do to accomplish the goal. You're working out, you're training hard, your skills are improving. See, every time that happens, the critic has less ammunition to throw at you. So you have to keep working on it. You have to work on your abilities. You have to prove, even in some cases, master those abilities. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, mastered their abilities. Tom Brady, mastered his abilities. Critic, what was the critic going to say to those guys? Not much, right? And interpersonal wise, we're really not talking about that because we're not communicating with other people, but internally communicating yourself is extremely important. What the words you say, your affirmations, what you watch, what you read, what you listen to, all those things are important because remember, all that stuff goes in, whether you like it or not, and it's in there. So if you're listening to stuff that's negative, depressing, things that just don't get you motivated, okay, well, that's not helping you. Step away, kind of run away from that stuff. I'm not saying that stuff is bad as a whole, but for what you're trying to do, you don't need that. You need information that's going to come in and reinforce to yourself that you have the abilities, you know how to control your emotions, you have the confidence, you have the commitment to achieve the goals that you set forth because you're serious about them. They're in line with your values, and that's your dream. That's your passion. We interviewed Mario Andretti a little bit ago, and that was it. That was like the bottom line for him. Love and passion for racing. There was nothing else. He said that. Obviously he loves his family, but as far as what he wanted to accomplish personally, it was racing. It was winning championships. It was being the very best he could be at racing. And it was because he loved it. And there was nobody. You were not going to derail him. His inner mind was so strong that every time I said, you're too small to drive that car, right? You don't have the team. You don't have the right engine. You don't have the ability to race in all these different disciplines. He could have listened to all that. He could have heard all the excuses, all the things that would get in his way, but he didn't. He has a champion mindset, and that's what you need. You need to overcome the critic inside and outside. And the 4 C's are going to help you do that. So I hope you picked up on a couple things here that are useful that you can apply. You can always go to chargeforwardcoaching.com to learn more about mental toughness, the 4 C's, and also the MTQ Plus assessment that you can take. It takes about 15 minutes. And from that, we'll have a one-on-one session. We could review the areas that you're strong in, other areas that you could work on, and you could improve yourself and hopefully go achieve the goals that you have out there for yourself. So go ahead and like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. And most of all, keep charging forward.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Charge Forward Coaching. Remember, the journey to greatness is built on mental toughness and consistent effort. So head on over to chargeforwardcoaching.com and book a free discovery call to take the next step in your journey. Until next time, stay focused, stay determined, and keep charging forward.